On today's show, NBA playoff upsets continue as Tyrese Haliburton calls game to put the Pacers up 2-0 on the Cavs despite Donovan Mitchell's huge night, and the Warriors take game one against the Wolves without Steph Curry. It's all coming up right here at Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And joining me is my partner in crime, David Ramil, host of Locked On Heat. David, we had two games in the NBA last night. What did you see out of those two games?
A very interesting game in Cleveland, and one that puts them on a pretty precarious situation, and then a lot of fun basketball all around. Incredible finishes, great basketball, and a potential series-altering injury that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later in the show.
This has been an absolutely fantastic start to the second round of the playoffs. We want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen each and every day. We're going to go out to, I know you kind of faltered for a second there when you were thinking about where that game two between the Pacers and Cavs took place, because it might have felt like a home game for the Pacers with how well they played, and the fact that they are now up 2-0. It feels like Pacers took care of their home court advantage in this one. A wild finish. Let's go out to Locked On Pacers for the quick recap on this one.
Hello from the scene of the crime right there. Tyrese Haliburton shot into that at 1 point 10-foot tall basket to give the Pacers a 120-119 lead. With a second to go. Wow. Pacers just keep doing this twice in a week. They have come back from 7 points down in the final 45 seconds of a game tonight, doing it against the Cavs. It took an Andrew Nembhard steal. It took free throws. It took an unbelievable Tyrese Haliburton shot. You don't beat the Pacers, the clock just runs out. They run out of time. Another unbelievable game for this team who, quite frankly, did a lot not very well tonight. They started off down 20 in the first half. Their possession battle game was a mess. They couldn't stop Donovan Mitchell. It looked like they'd be going back to Indy down, or even in the series at 1-1. Instead, another hellacious finish, another Tyrese Haliburton shot, and a 2-0 Pacers lead. They go to Cleveland and take both. It's just what they do at this point. If they win their home games, they will move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. We'll have so much more on Locked On Pacers after another unbelievable Pacers win.
David, just an unreal ending to this game. And again, for the Pacers, that where you don't want to be playing the Pacers apparently is up 7 with under a minute to go. That is the danger territory against this Pacers team if you're the Cavaliers. For that final possession, right? Tyrese Haliburton drives in, right? Draws the foul, gets to the free throw. I'm thinking, why are you driving in? Like, you need ideally you want a 3, right? Draw something up. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, Carlisle has got a timeout, like call it, draw something up, get a clean look. No. Okay. Haliburton goes in. And then I've seen some people say that I don't know if the miss was actually intentional at the free throw line. Was it? Did you get that vibe that he intentionally missed that free throw, or was it just a fortuitous bounce and he was able to recover the ball?
Yeah, it didn't seem intentional at the time. I haven't rewatched it a number of times, so I can't tell you for certain. Maybe you might see some kind of a alteration of his body language or something like that. But at the time, I remember thinking, oh, it's unfortunate that they missed it, and it's just probably going to cost them the game. Instead, it leads to late game heroics from him.
Just and to then back it out. And at that point, like, I'm sitting here as an unbiased third party. I'm thinking, call a timeout. Like, what are you doing? Draw something up. It's a broken play. Like, what? And just the calm and the poise. And that's just who Tyrese Haliburton is, right? To have that and then to nail that game-winning 3. Oh my goodness. And to run it off with, I don't think we can say it on the podcast, but the Sam Cassell celebration running down the court, the we'll say cojones instead, but that was an unbelievable comeback. And this Pacers team is legit. Maybe the best part was the crowd chanting overrated about Tyrese Haliburton. And you saw Donovan Mitchell like telling the crowd to like, stop that, go away with all that. And he was able to pull it out there at the end. Not a phenomenal game by Tyrese Haliburton's usual standards. 19 points, 7-11 shooting, only 4 assists, which is really pedestrian for what we usually expect out of him. maybe dealing with some kind of a left hand injury that he hurt earlier in the game. And then you saw him, he had a kind of a
wrap
on it for the rest of the evening. So maybe that played into it a little bit, but some fantastic contributions across the board. Miles Turner, 23 points, Aaron Nesmith, 23 from him. You got 19 from Benedict Mathurin off the bench. Just this Pacers team just keeps coming at you. They don't quit, and really no lead is safe around them.
It's unbelievable. I wasn't expecting this at all. I really thought the Cavaliers, and look, I watched this Cavs team up close against the Miami Heat in the previous series, and they put up some incredible numbers there. So I wasn't expecting them to have the same kind of ease in dispatching Indiana, but I certainly didn't expect them to be down 0-2 at this point. And I credit to the Indiana Pacers. They didn't play a great game. You pointed that out. They weren't phenomenal, and yet somehow they tightened their defense. They kept coming back. They made big shot after big shot, forced Cleveland to kind of throw up all over themselves. So you have to really, as much as you want to put blame on the Cavaliers for making mistakes down the stretch, you also have to give credit to the Pacers because they did a really good job of doing things almost near perfectly in the fourth quarter in order to come away with that win. And it's just worked out for them. Again, what I thought was a fortuitous bounce that kind of led to that big shot from Haliburton, and yet he was able to knock it down with Ty Jerome playing some solid defense. I mean, Jerome a little undersized there, but at least he was challenging the shot. Haliburton was pretty backed up behind the three-point line, and you said it well. Like, I mean, the calm, the idea of just like, you know what, I'm not scared of taking the shot. I know I can take it, and he did, and he nailed it. And with just 1 second left on the clock, too. Incredible ending to a game.
The early going of this game, right? Pacers just could not hold on to the basketball. They had like 9 or 10 turnovers within the first like 13, 14 minutes of the game. Cavs defense was phenomenal right out of the gate, holding Indiana to just 15 first quarter points. And again, it's almost like the script was flipped, right? Where they're, in that fourth quarter, Pacers put up 36 in that fourth quarter, 70 points in the second half of this game, 34 in the third, 36 in the fourth, and holding Cleveland to just 21 in that frame. You could kind of tell from the Cavs side of things, look, Donovan Mitchell played a hell of a game. 48 points, 15 to 30 shooting. He showed up in the way that you needed him to as a superstar, but you could tell he was gassed by the end of the game. I want to run our clip from Locked on Cavs here really quickly, get their side of this loss.
Danny Cunningham here at Rocket Arena after the Cleveland Cavaliers' stunning 120-119 loss to the Indiana Pacers in Game 2 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Let's talk about this one for 94 feet. The Cavs needed Donovan Mitchell to be a superstar on Tuesday night. Donovan Mitchell was a superstar on Tuesday night. Scored 48 points, gave it everything he had with no Darius Garland, no Evan Mobley, no DeAndre Hunter. Played a lot of minutes, was 15 of 30 from the floor, got to the line a bunch, didn't have his three-pointer tonight, just 1 of 7 from beyond the arc. But it wasn't enough because the Cavs couldn't close. They were up by 7 points with 1:06 left. But Tyrese Haliburton's three-pointer with a second left gave the Pacers one of the more improbable wins that I've seen this entire season. The Cavs absolutely stunned by this result. They got a superstar effort when they needed it, but it wasn't enough because they couldn't close. Maybe they get Darius Garland, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley back on Friday night in Game 3, but now they've got to go on the road facing an 0-2 series deficit. A very tough mountain to climb. We'll see if they can do it, and I'll talk to you again on Friday.
David, how much of this in your eyes was just Donovan Mitchell expending so much of that effort over the course of the rest of the game to put the Cavs in position to win, and then like even those final couple minutes, right? He looked like he was exhausted, worn out, had no legs, had very little life to his game by the end of that. And again, phenomenal game in his own right? Did everything that you needed him to do as a superstar. And it just felt like he needed maybe a little bit of help from somebody else down the stretch of this one and didn't get it.
I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, he still finished with 11 points in the fourth quarter. He had 8 of 11 free throw attempts, 2 of 6 from the floor. So I think that's where you can definitely see fatigue setting in. But he was still pretty solid. Sorry, 12 points in the fourth quarter. But it was just a lack of production from anybody else. Like Max Strus with just 5 points, Jared Allen with 2. I mean, Strus going 2 of 7 from the floor. That's not great. Sam Merrill going 0 of 2 from the floor. You got 2 other points from Isaac Okoro on free throws, and other than that, no production whatsoever. I mean, again, the Pacers played some great defense, but offensively, Cleveland was just totally out of sync in that last period. didn't seem to have any of the same energy. Very surprising for a team as good as Cleveland has been all season long. And I know it's easy to just point to the fact that you're missing 2 all-star players in your starting lineup and a key rotation player in DeAndre Hunter. But at the same time, they had all this momentum. They had all this energy. The crowd was buzzing. You kind of felt like you shook off any kind of stigma left over from the game 1 loss. And you could just kind of build them from here. It's like, you know what? At least we held our own. We protected home court for 1 game. Now we go into Indiana, see if we can snatch one there. I did not expect this kind of a collapse, but they did a really good job of the Pacers did a really good job of kind of shutting everybody else down and forcing Mitchell to be the only option there. And as good as he was all night, it just wasn't enough. And so it's kind of unfortunate for Mitchell because he did have that superstar performance, as Danny mentioned, and yet it just against a full, more complete effort from the Indiana Pacers, they just didn't have enough.
I had a couple other standouts from this game, 1 good, 1 bad. Ty Jerome, 2 points, 1 of 14 shooting. This was a legacy game, and not in the good way for Ty Jerome after building up the legend of Ty Jerome throughout this past regular season. And then Andrew Nembhard for the Pacers, who is easily, pound for pound, one of the best supporting pieces on any roster in the NBA. 13 points, but 13 assists. So he certainly helped kind of pick up some of the playmaking slack that Tyrese Haliburton is usually responsible for within that Pacers offense. We will be talking a little bit later about how in trouble is this Cavs team and how in trouble are all of these higher seeded teams now with NBA history being made for the first time in a conference finals. Every single road team winning the first game in the conference finals across the board. Never been done before in NBA history. That's where we go next as the Warriors taking game 1 against the Wolves without Steph Curry. We're going to get there in just 1 moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Open Phone. Look, if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or your computer. Their shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. You can manage business calls and texts from a single app, and their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answering common questions and capturing leads so you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. And continuing on here at Locked On NBA Game Night. Thanks so much for making Game Night your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, go find the Locked On show for your favorite team. Maybe it's Locked On Pacers with Tony East. Maybe it's Locked On Cavaliers with Danny Cunningham. Or maybe it's one of these 2 Locked On shows that we're getting ready to talk about, Warriors, Wolves. There's a show for your favorite team out there. Let's go out to Locked On Warriors to talk about this upset victory in favor of Golden State. Here we go to Locked On Warriors.
A Steph Curry hamstring injury was the only thing that could spoil this night. And we're going to look past that for the night because the Warriors have a 1-0 lead. Hamstrings are tricky. You don't know how long they're going to be. We'll wait for the official word. That's obviously the big storyline to come from this one. But equally as big, the Warriors take a 1-0 lead in a game that a lot of people thought they didn't have a shot in. They got very little rest compared to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Unfortunately, that rest for the Wolves led to some rust, serious rust. They missed their first 16 threes, 16 of them, some of them clean. Unfortunately, the Warriors made everything unclean, it seemed like. Anthony Edwards got off to a horrific start in this game, picked it up late, as did Naz Reid and some of the teammates, but never were able to get it closer than 9, I think, late in the game. 99-88 final score in favor of the Warriors. Draymond Green hit 4 3-pointers while Steph Curry was dealing with these, I guess the injury was just a couple of Draymond's threes, but they all came in kind of like a barrage where the Warriors turned a deficit into a 20-point lead in a hurry. And from there, it was Jimmy Butler, nearly a triple-double, and it was Buddy Hield leading the way once again for the Warriors with 24 points, 5 of 8 from 3. Jimmy had 20, 11, and 8. Draymond had 18. and the Warriors win by 11, a huge game one win. But of course, the attention turns to Steph Curry and that hamstring. The full breakdown on the Locked On Warriors post-game show. Check it out on YouTube.
You know, David, after watching a full 7-game series of my Rockets battling this Warriors team, I kind of thought, okay, well, they're going to walk into the next round and they're going to get absolutely obliterated by the Timberwolves, who actually have some semblance of an NBA offense. And then maybe I've just underrated this Warriors defense, but I kind of don't think I did. The Wolves just completely I don't know how their offense could be that bad, but I guess it's not the first time we've seen it, right? It was absolutely horrendous in game 5 against the Lakers, and they still managed to eke out the win there and close them out in 5. So that's my first question to you. How much of this do you think was credit to the Warriors defense against the Wolves versus the Wolves just being flat out awful offensively in this game, well below their usual standards?
I'd say it's 50-50 because I think I'm a believer in the Warriors defense, and certainly even when Steph went out, like they could change their lineups around. So credit to Steve Kerr for finding the right pieces to kind of mix and match in there so that they could turn up their defense to an even higher level without Steph, knowing that they'd have to grind this game out. They wouldn't be able to rely on his offense as much as they normally do. And so they did a really good job, but there were wide open shots. And Anthony Edwards specifically missed early on the game. Like there were buddies that he was missing at the rim, wide open 3-point shots that we've seen him nail throughout the regular season. Julius Randle was inefficient. You know, there was just a lot of bad offense from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I don't think it was necessarily due to the Warriors defense. So that's why it's half and half to me. Like the Warriors played great defense, but Minnesota should not have been as bad as they were.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards missing his first 10 shots of the game, so he was just awful to start. And then he just completely turned it around because then he hit 9 of his next 12. So he finished 23 points, 9 of 22 shooting from the floor. Did lead the team with 14 rebounds, a team spearheaded by Rudy Gobert in the paint, and somehow Anthony Edwards walks away with the most rebounds. So he was trying to find ways to impact the game despite being kind of a lemon offensively at that point. And then the Warriors just, it feels weird saying they won this one without Steph because he still played 13 minutes. He left early in the second quarter. So he actually played, got some rest, came back in, was, in his usual part of the rotation, scored 13 points on 5 of 9 shooting in the 13 minutes that he did play before leaving with the hamstring injury. But then it's just, Buddy Hield stepped up in a big way. He only had 2 points at halftime, scored 22 in the second half. And the Warriors offense with this is such a fascinating matchup to me. And we talked about this on the squad show this week, is just trying to figure out how the Warriors were going to deal with the size that the Wolves have, because this was the same dilemma that they had against the Rockets in the first round. And they elected to kind of go with the same idea here, is start Buddy Hield. You're going to use the 5-out spacing, and you're going to try and stretch the Timberwolves defense out and really punish them. And it really felt like the Wolves could not get around the perimeter enough. Warriors set that initial screen, they would get, it's like they just kill you repeatedly over and over with their ball movement, to where, okay, they might not get you on the first DHO or the first pass out or the first swing to an open shooter, but they're going to get you on the second or the third or the fourth one. And the moment you die, the moment you don't rotate, the moment you miss an assignment, it's a wide open 3 for Steph Curry or Buddy Hield or Pajemski, who only hit 1 in this game, but or Draymond Green, who knocked down 4 threes. It was like he and Steph Freaky Friday before Steph had to leave with the hamstring injury. It was absurd.
Well, he stepped up in a way. Like when Steph got hurt, I think he hit 3 consecutive threes, almost back-to-back possessions. He was just really. He took it upon himself to kind of carry the offense, and the shot was falling for him. So it was almost an anomaly in some ways. But there you see at least the baseline for what they're trying to do. They go small, as you pointed out. They play their defense at a high level. And as long as they can take Anthony Edwards out here and there, you're kind of forcing everybody else to step up. And it worked tonight. The problem is moving forward with Steph Curry and his injury. And I think that's where I don't know if you have to shift the way that you attack game 2. The same game plan, I don't think will work moving forward. It doesn't feel sustainable. Buddy, as good as he's been for Golden State, as good as he's been in the playoffs, you're going to have a good game, and then you're going to probably follow that up with a not as great game. And I don't know that he's going to be able to. This is the nature of who he is throughout his career. I don't know that you're going to be able to get that same kind of production from him in game 2 as you did tonight.
You're certainly going to need a lot more Jimmy Butler. That is for sure. Although he 20 points, took 20 shots to get there, so not incredibly efficient in this game. So you're going to need the best version of Jimmy, depending on the outcome of the Steph Curry injury and how much time, if any at all, that he winds up missing in this one. Let's hear from Locked On Wolves, their side of the story on this game.
The Timberwolves fall by 11 in game one of their second round series with the Golden State Warriors. I'm Ben Beacon, host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast. And the Timberwolves just turned in their lowest scoring half in franchise history in game one of a second round playoff series. 31 points in the first half for Minnesota, just 11 in the second quarter. No made threes in the first half of this game, and Ant had 1 point at halftime. The Wolves did show a little life in the third quarter. Steph Curry left the game in the second quarter with a hamstring strain and did not return. He had 13 points in the 13 minutes he did play. But the others for Golden State, Buddy Hield especially, was fantastic. Minnesota did not take advantage of their size advantage in this game. They turned it over 16 times. That kind of negated their advantage on the offensive glass. They also shot just 17% on threes, one game after shooting 14% on threes in their Game 5 win over the Lakers. This was an all-systems failure game, and Anthony Edwards was at the center of all of it. We're going to break the whole thing down over at Locked On Wolves.
David, I think it's really easy to look at, first off, Ant, right? He flat out has to be better, right? Can't have an 0 for 10 start, can't kind of put them in that hole to begin with, right? Trying to, you expend so much energy trying to claw back from 20 something down that, by the time you're able to kind of make it a game, cut it to single digits, you're already running on fumes because of the effort, the emotional, the mental investment to get yourself out of that hole in the first place. I saw a lot of people really kind of critiquing Julius Randle's game in this one. I thought Randle was actually by and large solid in this game. 18 points, only 4 of 11 shooting, but he was 10 of 10 at the free throw line. He had 6 assists, did have a few turnovers, so not a perfect game for him. The biggest culprit outside of Ant's struggles in this game to me was Dante DiVincenzo. He was all over the place in this one. Only 7 points, 4 turnovers, 1 for 7 from downtown. Like he flat out needs to be better. You can look up and down the Wolves roster and say all the shooters need to be a little bit better. And I guess that's the benefit for the Wolves is you lost by 11, sure. And you had quite possibly the worst game you could have had, right? They scored 31 points at halftime. A franchise, Ben said it, right? Franchise low, right? Ever, all time. That's absurd. I feel like if you're a Wolves fan, you've got to be pretty confident that you don't get another performance like this one in this series or in this postseason, hopefully, right? Fingers crossed.
I think I agree with you about the Randle criticism. He seemed like he felt more impactful, especially early on when Anthony Edwards was struggling as much as he was. You weren't getting much production from anybody. And by that point, it was mostly a blowout, but at least Randle was still competitive. It's just low-hanging fruit. The narrative that he's going to be choking in the playoffs and he's not going to step up in these big game situations. And so you can kind of cherry pick and say, oh, look at that. They lost. They didn't get the kind of production. He wasn't efficient, et cetera. This is just who he is. And you look at the numbers. Yeah, certainly Anthony Edwards, by the time he wound up having a stellar second half, made all the difference in the world. It just kind of looks a lot nicer. But the reality is that, as Ben pointed out, it starts with Edwards. He is the straw that stirs that particular drink, and he needs to be better. DiVincenzo also might not get a lot of the blame, but as impactful or solid, at least, as Randle was, DiVincenzo felt like the exact opposite. The turnovers were so costly. At a point in time when you're making a run or trying to close the game out, he loses balance, falls out of bounds, makes a bad errant pass, just completely boneheaded plays there that we don't expect from him necessarily. He definitely has to be better. But I think it starts and ends with Edwards. If you want to be one of the top superstars in this league, and I think he's certainly in consideration for that, and not necessarily just as the face of the league in general, but just one of the top superstars in this league, you have to have better performances. You cannot stink it up the way that you did in the first half. You have to be able to carry the team to a huge degree, and we didn't see that from just look at the context of what Donovan Mitchell did in Cleveland. If nobody else is producing, at the very least Mitchell was. Anthony Edwards has to play with the same kind of energy and intensity and purpose.
I will say one more thing here. You talk about low-hanging fruit. Rudy Gobert is usually the low-hanging fruit for being a punching bag for the reason a team lost or didn't perform to expectations. I'm not going to put anything on Gobert in this. I will just say I want to see the Wolves actually try to use Gobert to punish the undersized Warriors a little bit more, right? I'm not expecting another, 24 and 27 game or whatever, like he had, in game 5 against the Lakers. That's not sustainable. That you're not going to win a series playing through Rudy Gobert, but there were too many moments where he had a smaller player put onto him, where you could just, all it takes is get a deep seal under the basket. He had a really good one against Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler's not like a small fry. Like, Jimmy Butler's strong, right? So he had Jimmy Butler dead to rights under the basket and just backed it a quick couple power dribbles and then just dunked over him, right? Jimmy kind of gave up on the play, in fact. And so, like, just a few more of those here and there. But it was interesting to see, Steve Kerr go to Kevon Looney late in that fourth quarter, Draymond Green with his fifth foul, and then Looney checked in and immediately was just a terror on the boards. You immediately felt his impact, and that's going to be an interesting chess match to watch between these two teams. Does Steve Kerr feel the need to go big? Does he go to Kevon Looney more? Can the Wolves make the Warriors regret playing small? This is going to be a really fascinating series to watch play out, and hopefully Steph is healthy just for the entertainment value of it all, because I would love to see both of these teams at full health trying to outclass one another. But the Warriors get the 1-0 lead, and that leads us into our final segment. Which higher seeded team is in the most trouble to start the second round? We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On NBA Game Night. All right, David, we had a historic start to our second round of the NBA playoffs. Every single home court team has lost at this point. Some teams, Cavaliers, have lost twice. Which of the higher seeded teams of the four that are currently down, so Celtics, Cavs, Wolves, and Thunder so far, which team do you think is in the most trouble to start the second round, and why?
I know the easy answer is Cleveland, but you're going to get two All-Stars back. You're going to get a Hunter back, and I think as challenging as it is to try and win in Indiana, and Indiana's a far better team at home than they are on the road, and Haliburton particularly is a better player than even what he was tonight. I still think, I'm just a blind believer in what Cleveland's been able to accomplish this season. So I'm actually going to say, surprisingly, I think Oklahoma City is in a little bit of trouble. I think you lost a great advantage there in being able to go up 2-0 against a proven team in Denver that's now feeling very confident. And I know it's kind of simplistic, as a lot of people have pointed out before, but as good as SGA is, I still think that the best player on the floor is Nikola Jokic, and we saw him have a monster game in Game 1. And that being the case, I like their chances, because you're going to have to go in Denver. You're going to face the altitude. You're going to face a tough Denver crowd, and the experience of knowing what it takes. This might have been the worst possible matchup for Oklahoma City, because, again, where you have the youth and relative inexperience of a Thunder squad that has never been put in this position, you almost have the exact opposite of that, and very proven veterans like Gordon, like Russell Westbrook, and of course like Jokic, and they know what it takes to capitalize on these moments much more effectively. So I think Oklahoma City might be surprisingly in a great deal of danger. So that's my pick. It's certainly not Boston. I'm not a believer. Again, you barely eked out a win in a game when you missed 45 3-pointers. I don't believe that the Knicks are going to be able to continue to beat up on Boston the way that they did, or to find a way to beat Boston the way they did in Game 1. I don't know. What's your take? I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest. You took mine. It was Denver, and part of it is just like coming into the series. Oklahoma City's been the buzzsaw team, right? They've carved up every team that they've dealt with so far in the regular season. They looked just head and shoulders above the Grizzlies there in round 1. But that Game 1, watching the way that Jokic performed, and my big thing is just, the Thunder are not going to have an answer for Jokic at all in this series. And the thing is Jokic can play however you need him to play, right? If you need him to be the hub and get everybody else involved, he's more than happy to do that. But if you need him to be the monster and go out there and get you 42 and 22, he's also more than capable of doing that. And when I tell you that Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein looked small trying to deal with Jokic, I don't know what the counter is going to be. I don't know how you get to a point where you can nullify some of the things that he was able to do there in Game 1. And as long as you get the requisite production from the other guys, which the wild thing is, it wasn't even a phenomenal game from like Jamal Murray, right? It 21 points on 16 shots. He kind of struggled shooting from the floor. Like, you only 1 of 5 from Peyton Watson off the bench. Like you didn't have a great overall game. You just had a monster night from Jokic, and that was still enough to put you in position there at the end for Aaron Gordon to deliver. And yet another miraculous way here in this postseason. So I think I'm with you on the Nuggets angle. We both agree there. So let's just to make this a little interesting then, where do we go for who's next most in trouble then? We got a little bit more time in our show. It's Cleveland for sure.
Cleveland. It has to be. I mean, look, you might get
even if I guaranteed you right now that they are fully healthy starting game 3, does that change your perception of the rest of the series? You get Garland, you get Mobley, you get Hunter back. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's good the rest of the series. So they got to win. They got to win 4 out of 5 games. That's tough, but it's not impossible for how good that Cleveland team was. That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah, I know. But it's also surprising. Like they shouldn't have been in this position. Like I think the game 1, they kind of took their foot off the gas, maybe underestimated how good Indiana's been. Yeah, they certainly had a cakewalk against Miami in the first round, maybe a little bit of rust or whatever. But they should have outperformed in game 1. Game 2 absolutely fell apart. I mean, and that kind of has to get into your head a little bit. So you wonder whether or not Cleveland's going to be able to respond, and whether or not they're going to be able to. If they go in game 3 and they're fully healthy, as you said, then you have to go in there and punch Indiana early and often to start the game, and you have to build a incredible sizable lead so you can kind of remind yourself, oh, no, we're the dominant team here. We're the ones that put up a historically good season in Cleveland. We know what we can do. We're not scared of anybody. As good as Haliburton is in Indiana, you're not concerned with him. It's about focusing on what you do well more than anything else that Indiana does. And that might jumpstart something, but to ask you to win 4 out of the next 5 games with an Indiana team that's, and rightfully so, feeling pretty good about themselves, that's a tough challenge.
It is. The way that I look at it, though, too, is I go, first off, game 2 is going to be the game that they're absolutely kicking themselves for, right? The way that Donovan Mitchell played, not being able to close that one out, having the lead late. And yes, they fell apart as well there in game 1. But game 1, the margins were so much closer. And to me, the big difference there in game 1 is Donovan Mitchell looked incredible there in game 2. And I don't think necessarily that the Pacers defense really has an answer for him. And his 3 ball still hasn't started to fall. That's kind of the other crazy part is, once he starts to get that going for him, so in game 1, right, he was 1 for 11 from downtown. Game 2, he goes 1 for 7 from downtown, but he finds much more consistency getting downhill, getting to the rim. Got 21 free throw attempts, 17 of 21 there. Once his 3 ball starts to fall, I go back to the outcome of game 1. The Pacers had almost like a perfect game 1, maybe a few more turnovers than what you would like to see, but it took them shooting 52.8% from downtown. They got basically perfect games from everybody up and down the rotation, except for Pascal Siakam, just 6 of 15 shooting there in game 1. So, I mean, yes, reasonably, he could be a little bit better, right? A little bit closer to his normal averages, but Donovan Mitchell was really rough with his efficiency there, 33 points on 30 shots in game 1. I just think if you repeat the circumstances of game 1 with everybody in its hand, they didn't have Garland in game 1. That's the other element to consider, right? So I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little bit higher on the Cavs than I should be at this point. The Pacers have showed me every reason why I should be banking on them to, hell, just sweep this series at this point. The Pacers are in position to sweep the Cavs. That's the crazy part. So we'll leave you with that. It's Thunder are in the most danger. That's what we think. And then Cavaliers in most danger. The 1 seeds, man, they might be going out a lot quicker than we anticipated. A lot of people had them pegged for at least a conference finals appearance, and they might be headed out here in the second round. But we want your thoughts. Which team is in the most danger? Which higher seeded team is in the most danger here in the second round? Let us know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But thanks so much for being here with us on Locked On NBA Game Night. For your next listen, go find the Locked On Show for your favorite team. Until then, we'll catch you guys on our very next game night.